France is an example. They have they perceive themselves as having a budgetary problem, and the question is, are you going to ask poor people to pay or rich people? Well, in the United States, we ask the poor people, but normal governments ask rich people, especially. Let me say the nature of the proposal in France and in the G20 was a minimum 2% tax. And what that meant was you look at their wealth and you look at all the taxes they're paying on capital, and you say at least the taxes on capital should be at least 2% of your wealth. So one way of thinking about it is, let's say you're earning 6% of return on your capital. A 2% tax is a 33% tax rate, which is much lower than the ordinary people are paying on their taxes. So all it's saying is the super rich should pay at least as much, not even as much as people who are not so well off. And I gave a talk, you were there, at the, we had a discussion at the National Assembly, and I commented, it's quite remarkable that in France, there are so many super rich who are willing to say that either they're incompetent, i.e. they're making less than 6%, and therefore a 2% tax is a much higher rate than, or they're tax avoiders. And we know most of them are probably not incompetent. They're almost surely making more than 6%. So there's the richest people in France are raising their hand and saying, I'm a tax avoider. Because if they weren't tax avoiders, the tax would not be they wouldn't have to pay any extra. So I find it quite remarkable. We know some of them are actually, well, no, I won't say anymore. There are two other reasons that are really important for this minimum tax. One is democracy. That if you have the super rich not paying their fair share, their wealth will grow more and more, and you get that disproportionate growth of their wealth distorts democracy. And so, not that this is going to remedy the whole problem, but it moves you in the right direction. So, and the third is related, is social cohesion. And more broadly, collecting taxes for ordinary individuals. We depend largely on voluntary compliance. You know, it looks like there's an IRS or, a tax collection office. But in fact, if people didn't voluntarily comply, it would be very hard to collect taxes. So basically, all governments rely on voluntary compliance. But you won't get voluntary compliance if everybody believes that other people are not paying their taxes. And so the super rich, because they're super rich, have access to good tax lawyers for tax avoidance. And no matter how good the writing of tax laws are, there are loopholes, and they find them. And there's a constant battle. Government ministries, finance ministries have to close the loopholes, and then they find new loopholes, and that's a sort of normal battle. But the minimum tax sort of short circuits the battle. It says, I don't care what loopholes you find and in what language, you have to pay 2% minimum. And that disincentivizes tax avoidance activities. And, in my mind, these tax avoidance activities, tax lawyers, are, I don't want to say parasite, but are not socially productive activities. They're bright people whose mind could be better deployed creating things rather than trying to avoid taxes. Did I answer your question, or are there some parts of it you want me to?
No, it's no, very good. And I think this link also to democracy is exactly the reason why we are here today. It's not just about raising money. Money is important to deliver, but also it's about securing democracy and how this extreme power concentration in the hands of very few is a matter of power, and it's breaking the.
And I guess I want to answer. One of the concerns always raised is will it disincentivize innovation? And my view is it won't. That is absolutely, and there are two ways of looking at it. If you look at the super rich, say in the United States, is it the case that our richest people would, Jeff Bezos, would he be a less ruthless monopolist if you taxed him more? And would he say, I'm not going to work anymore? It's just absurd. Getting 100 billion or getting 300 billion is paper money. He may have to buy a slightly smaller yacht, but it won't significantly affect his lifestyle. But more importantly, it won't affect his efforts to maximize the returns he can get. The idea that you need to pay these super rich more money to get them off the golf course, I think there's no empirical evidence that there is any effect. And they have access. Sometimes the argument is used, it will take away their free cash. But if you remember, when we say the super rich, it's their net wealth. If you're sitting on $1 billion, you can get access to capital. You and I can't get access. We have a brilliant idea. We are credit rationed. We go to the bank and they may not trust us. But if you are sitting on $1 billion and you have a brilliant idea, I can assure you that you can find somebody that will lend you money or invest in you. So the idea that there would be a shortage of capital is, I think, absurd. Finally, governments are going to need revenue, and the question is, who's going to pay? And one way of thinking about it, if they pay less, somebody else is going to be paying more. And who is going to be constrained? It's small entrepreneurs. It's ordinary individuals that are likely to be more constrained. And therefore, if you think about the trade-off, it's clear that we ought to be focusing more on getting more access to capital to the small innovators, where most of the important innovation actually occurs, rather than in the super rich.